Welcome to Real Zeal, a podcast like no other, brought to you by yours truly, Trish Burke.
And James Burke. ADHD is loud, proud and unfiltered.
We are absolutely honoured to bring you all the topics, big to small and everything in between, in a way that is honest, truthful, with a veil of compassion, all in the name of ensuring everyone feels heard and validated.
We can't wait to host a myriad of guests that will blow your mind, and we're going to have candid conversations that will absolutely knock your socks off.
So get your tissue box ready for the tears that you might shed. Pad up because you're going to piss yourself laughing.
Strap yourself in and get yourself ready for some real zeal. Welcome to Real Zeal. I am your co-host, James Burke, and
I am the other co-host, Trish Burke, and this is our lovely friend, Arijana, psychologist, brilliant friend, gorgy girl. We're so excited to have you to share your psychological wisdomous excellence with us.
This is not the first time we've had Arijana with us, so if you haven't seen the previous episodes we've had with her, go back, watch them, pause now, go watch, come back later.
It'll make more sense.
Yeah,
and
really
even
will.
If it doesn't, listen to all of them and then come back. Double speed, highly recommend. I'm still intelligible, I can tell you that.
I can only do 1.5.
1.5.
Yeah.
Well, me on 1.5 is very fast.
It was a bit of a deep dive. 1.5, guys.
You put it on 2 because that way everyone keeps up with you, right?
Yeah, and I already know what I've said, so
This
it's
is true.
just like a speeded up version of myself. All right, let's dive in.
You just need the button that just 3 times my bits and then 1.5 everyone
I
else.
found that really annoying. I tried that once
okay.
on a drive, but thankfully there's a touch screen.
I did
now.
not know you could do that. That's my take. Love that.
See, you learn new things every
what
day.
we're here for, apparently.
And we can share our technological smarts.
No. Don't
None
come
of
to us
which
for
I have.
technological
No,
advice.
on and off again is my tech support advice to anyone.
She even calls me to go, should I turn it off and on again? I'm just like, yes, turn it off and turn it on again.
Okay, well, that just lilts
Oh,
ourselves into our very excellent topic for today. We're talking and traversing the very interesting, oh my goodness, you are an overachiever, you are highly successful as an adult. Wait, what?
I don't know
Neurodivergent?
how you're doing all these things.
You've got ADHD. Yeah, how do you do all those things? The classic one-liners that often ADHD is here, or the how come you don't do anything, that's also another one-liner that can also play into the piece.
Stop being so lazy.
Stop being so lazy. Oh my goodness, there are so many of these phrases.
Just triggered
And
you
also
again.
like, how come you're so busy? How is that a compliment? I mean,
Yeah.
or is it an insult? We don't
Yeah.
know. But a lot of the time as clinicians, and Arijana, you would probably be able to speak to this from experience as well, and us from attending the professional space
Sure.
as well, that you would probably have some very high-functioning individuals. Now, high-functioning, we don't mean a less affected version with your neurotype. No. By high-functioning, we mean the output on the outside looks collected, put together, structured, able to function in human society really well. But that is often what comes across in one environment.
Right.
Then maybe the transition home or the life in the home space looks markedly different.
Yeah. The functional dysfunction, and how do you sort of math in your life?
It's crazy. And I think this is something for me personally that I have journeyed with, because even, getting my adult diagnoses a few years ago, even my parents going, but you were perfectly fine throughout childhood. You achieved, you got great marks, your reports were good, albeit that she would do better if she didn't distract everyone around her and talk to everyone.
If only she
Subtext.
applied herself.
I did, man. I got
Applied herself
very
better.
good grades, but, the
And
achievement
I say
was there.
apply yourself in terms of you are completely self-supported.
Yes,
You're doing the best you can being self-supported.
exactly. And then, but you couldn't possibly be an ADHDer. You couldn't possibly, aren't those people climbing walls and rolling around on the floor making cat noises, or
Literally had friends in disbelief when I was sharing with them about my diagnosis. They're just like, no. I'm like, yeah.
And I think this is largely one of the problems that we still have. I mean, it's something we bump into as clinicians diagnostically. A lot of the measures and the resources we're using, even still today, are not, I think, diversified enough in terms of data and sensitive enough in that we are still stereotypically looking through the lens of white young males. That's what a lot of the data, was sort of stereotyped around. And so sometimes a lot of my clients don't even present on the screeners, and that technically should be a reason to sort of stop looking further and sort of having these collaborative conversations of what's really going on in your life, more behind the scenes,
And I think the mental tax of outwardly performing and outwardly achieving comes at a great expense of the inner self and the inner well-being, and how that plays out after hours when the performance lights of work or school switch off and you're in your home life. And potentially the people at home get a very different version of you because you've put all of your capacity, all of your spoons, all of your energy into ticking all the boxes that everyone expects of you. And then you get home and you're like, I'm a piece of mashed potato. I'm just going to crawl in my bed, put my comfies on and cover myself with my doona and eat cereal because that is the easiest thing for me to consume that I don't have to chew or think about.
And sometimes that hyperfunctionality can extend to your home life as well for some, to the point where you can live in such an isolated way that no one in your life actually knows what's really going on inside of you.
Wow.
And that can be a very difficult place to exist in. Often comes with self-medication for people that, they're trying to sort of manage that up and down in terms of what's happening, with essentially the nervous system feeling really fried. You can imagine at the end of the day where I think, we're speaking to hyperfunctionality in terms of it is there and you're able to do things in a really incredible and high-achieving way. But that can often sit behind a layer of also masking that hyperfunctionality. And so that's sort of like doing your genius, but also looking a certain way while doing it. And that mask can be on all the time sometimes for people.
I, from my experience, would have said that exterior life outside of the home, highly masking. Interior in the home, also highly masking, which led to an absolute combustion because there is only so long that you can run at covering it up, making it look like you're meeting all the needs of everyone around you and outwardly still looking put together. You can only do that for so long as a human.
And sometimes you can, and you yourself are sort of in a space of just not knowing. This is the, hopefully self-awareness pathway in people's therapy journeys where, say for a lot of women, I've heard them describe, it wasn't until my later adult life, hence the adult ADHD diagnosis, that the wheels sort of fell off. It wasn't until I went into that CEO position or I stepped up into that leadership space that I started really seeing the cracks in myself. But up until that point, I was hyperfunctional and I still am, but with some cracks.
And you talked about a lot of that self-medicating aspect of covering up that high masking lifestyle or that high performance lifestyle. For me, I was doing a lot of dopamining. So it would be shopping, finding a new thing, something new to pop and interest me. It would be doom scrolling to look at something new and different to sort of spark my mind back into a place of creativity, to be able to fuel myself for the next day, for the next moment, for the next whatever. I know
And that's kind of the healthy self-medication as well.
Not healthy on the bank account, I might say, and not healthy for a marriage necessarily where you're masked towards your partner.
Correct.
As well. And I think that's where our previous episode where we're talking about authenticity really loops in. So jump back to that one if you haven't listened already. But I think that whole concept of understanding what you may be self-medicating with. It could be substances, but it could also be behaviours. It could be skin picking. It could be, standing in the shower for unusual amounts of time, just like trying to numb yourself. It could be a myriad of things, driving yourself through sport or exercise to try and get endorphins, to try and fuel yourself and top up that dopamine deficit.
Mine was escapism.
Yeah.
It was video games, TV shows, movies, something that I could switch my mind off completely and not have to think about what was going on in my life.
And if you think about the sort of nervous system, and ideally we're sort of wanting to live in that window of tolerance where we experience our highest levels of self-regulation. For some it could be that hyper-arousal, which looks like the, excessiveness of things, the risk-taking, the what have you. And then the lower end of the nervous system is that sort of hypo-arousal, the dissociative type qualities that you kind of go into, whether that's through distraction or, numbing out or scrolling
Yeah.
or zoning out. And again, for some of us, you're swinging between the two, and that could be someone's typical day behind the scenes.
And this is something we typically see in the preteen and teen mode, particularly with screen addiction. And I know this is a hot topic in our current era, but that whole escapism, disassociation, connecting with peers via gaming, one, there's the healthy level of that. But if that escapism is becoming the all the time, and as a parent, you're on the outside looking in going, hey, this kiddo, what's happening at school is one thing, but then what's happening at home, there's a lot of locking away, there's a lot of wanting to be by themselves, and there's a behaviour shift in that from, previous family engagement or having a bit of a fun time or a laugh at home and not being able to do that. Those are some of those things as parents we should be on the lookout for, I think, because it's those changes and shifts in the way that the individuals that we know within our family are relating to the world around them that can be little flags of, hey, let's explore and dig deeper to what might be going on underneath here. Because high performing doesn't necessarily mean that they're happy.
Nope.
No.
Or that they're functional.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And
how can we do that, Arijana? Because I think particularly for girls and for women, late diagnoses women that might be wondering, oh, wow, these things are clicking in for me. What kind of questions can we be asking ourselves, or what kind of signs can we be looking for to help to identify, hey, that's not high performance and yay, that's exactly who they are, but they might actually be pushing against the inner workings of their brain, potentially neurodivergencies at play. How can we be on the lookout for that as parents, as safe adults working with kids? How can we be aware?
Totally. Look, I think I've had a lot of, clients of late starting their therapy journey from, I saw a few things on social media and I'm wondering, so I think social media, the pros and cons to it, but has been really resourceful for some people. There's a sense of resonance that they've come to. Other resources and tools you can sort of start to kind of look at as well. I think, again, we might have said this on the other podcast, but a lot of trash and treasure in terms of what you can bump into. But sort of demystifying that idea that people often only come to therapy when the wheels have actually really properly fallen off.
100%.
And if you've got questions, that is an extremely valid reason to start your journey if you haven't already. Find somebody that can sort of give you some guide rails to help you ask the right questions, but also, start to kind of get some bearings of where do I want to go in starting to answer those. And maybe that is the beginnings of an assessment pathway. Maybe that's just getting some more information that sort of gives you a launching off platform of where to go from there. That can often be a really safe space because often, if you're talking to people that don't know a lot about this, and I think we're sort of still emerging when it comes to educating ourselves around ADHD, ADHD, autism, what neurodiversity looks like at large. If you don't fit that stereotypical presentation, it isn't uncommon that you'll get a response like, well, surely not you. And it can be, the research shows us too now that, if you sort of don't find the right fit of therapy, you get some of these really discouraging comments, it can take someone another 6 to 12 months to even reattempt looking into that again, which is a huge chunk of life.
If at all, if they even get brave enough to go, I'm going to go at it again, that first time burnt could be, that's it for that individual.
And that, I feel very lucky in some regards in that I had to bring it up and I had to advocate for myself with my GP to start with. And in some ways it was only because we had a really amazing GP who knew the whole family.
Yes.
But also knew that we weren't just throwing things at the wall and seeing what would stick, that she trusted me enough to go, okay, I don't necessarily see it, but from what you're telling me, let's investigate further. Because otherwise it would have been like, no, that doesn't seem to make sense. Don't worry about it.
Absolutely. And that being the end of it, where you go, well, that must not be what it is. But also too, the misdiagnosis process, where I think, for a lot of women, it can be that they've got some really awful labels like BPD, borderline personality disorder, bipolar. So you've maybe been misdiagnosed, or you're like, well, maybe I'm just anxious. But, is that sitting secondary to not having properly integrated the way you need to function optimally for yourself? So it can be complex to start off with. And you're right, James. I think sometimes it's actually the GP you're having that very first conversation with as a starting point. And so that can be tricky to navigate.
Yeah.
And if you really have this hunch that there's something there or something feels unanswered or a little bit different, listen to that. That's important.
Yeah, so you said that was like the perfect time to actually start investigating that stuff, is
Yes.
when you've got that hunch. But often the times there is the reality that people don't actually start to seek help until the wheels fallen off. So tell us a bit about that, about what what the dangers are, kind of thing, of just trying to push on and live this kind of high functioning life.
Sure. I think the big one, and there's a lot of speak about it now in our communities, is chronic burnout. I think coming off the bat of what we've all lived through recently, COVID, there's sort of episodic burnouts that we can all sort of be a part of as communities and cultures we've existed in. But I'm sort of speaking in terms of like deeper functionings. You might be burning out on the daily and that becomes your normal functioning. You might sort of wake up one day and be like, I can't get out of bed today and function. And if you sort of look over the container of your life, you might have had multiple episodes of burnouts and breakdowns, challenges around maybe when you're having a menstrual cycle for women, other aspects of that for men. You might be in serious financial strife because you're, self-medicating through certain ways. You might be going through a string of like short-lasting jobs because you can't sort of gotten to a point where you can't keep it together anymore. Maybe the wheels are falling off in a domain of your life, like you were talking about, Trish, but everything else sort of looks okay for the most part. Or a common one that I often hear people describe too is that I know I'm smart enough. I know I've got the potential. I know I've got these gifts and talents, but I feel like I'm still underperforming to what I'm capable of. Meanwhile, you could still be hyperfunctional in that. But it's just a deep knowing that something feels off in the way that I'm operating. And that might be less around you and how you are actually inclined to operate internally and more about how you're trying to make it work out there.
Yep. It's so true. And I think the layers in that, not just for yourself, if you're self-identifying those points, but if you're observing that within, for example, your children, that's another space, I think, for us as adults that we're very aware if you're in the family stage of life of how am I meeting the needs of my kids? And if they're not potentially understanding that a neurodivergent exploration is actually going to help them to unlock knowledge and power to how they work and how they run.
Yes.
And if they're seeing it as a negative, then they're like, no, I don't want to go and get a diagnosis. No, I don't want to explore my neurotype because I don't want to be different. I just need to be more focused, or I just need to put in a different routine, or I just need to write another calendar schedule or have more reminders. Yeah, you could put all of those compensatory strategies into place or support strategies into place. But if you're actually pushing a cart uphill and there could be a completely different way for you to do it, and if you learnt that that is the best way for you to do it, you could be a person that's better to pull a cart uphill as opposed to pushing it, and that's more effective for you. Wouldn't you want to know that?
Of course. And, if you look at history, some of the greatest minds that have lived to date have been neurodivergent individuals. So it's, really important to figure that out. And you're right, you could be, throwing mud at a wall and hoping it sticks with all of the tools and resources that are out there. But if you don't know why you're doing that, where that fits in the grand scheme of what you need internally, and I call it sort of the disintegrated approach, it is like throwing, mud at a wall and hoping it sticks. And maybe some pieces will and they'll help you for a bit, but that undercurrent of dysfunction will continue to be there and you'll know it internally.
Well, that was me. My burnout was 16 years in the making.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just this slow burn that kept building under the surface.
Are you in my brain? Mine was also 16 years in the making too.
It's almost like we've got kids that are like the same
And what
age.
was sort of the tipping point for you?
Our tipping point was stuff at work changed and I started to have less autonomy and less trust at work. And so I went from being far busier and with more responsibility and thriving to losing the autonomy and the trust
and the stimulation
and the
flexibility.
And so even though I had more time to do the things I was doing, it was getting infinitely worse.
And
internally.
more time is not good.
No.
Less time is sometimes better.
Exactly. Yeah.
The pressure on the brain.
Exactly.
To perform, the adrenaline drop. And similarly for me, I think there was more control and there was more restriction and there was less creative space and less trust. I think when trust
is a big one.
removed from any sort of dynamic, be it an employment dynamic or a relationship dynamic, I think it's at that point that you start to panic, and that's where my full emotional breakdown occurred. I was pretty much bedriddled for 3 months.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And for a high-functioning woman, that looked really wrong. And then there was a lot of misdiagnoses splattered against the wall. Is it postnatal anxiety, postnatal depression? Is it bipolar? Is
Perimenopausal
it stuff? And is it seasonal affective disorder? And yes, doing the journey with a psychological team really helped me in terms of, but some of those terms stuck for a bit and the strategies helped for a bit, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't the right fit. And I think once the ADHD diagnosis came through formally, even though I'd been implementing the strategies for such a long time, it just was like relief of this is what works for me.
Yes.
This is what works for my brain. This is what works for my body. And
I kind of call it like seeing, because you are doing intuitively sometimes the things that work and figuring it out, which is probably why you've been able to keep it up for 16 years, right? But it's like being able to see yourself through a clearer mirror.
yes.
And it's like getting a cloth and cleaning the mirror and going, okay.
And that whole process, that unveiling of true self, potentially, a very raw and exposing process, but also a very beautiful process in the sense of, wow, okay, not broken and not messed up, which are some of the labels that had been thrown and had started to stick, but actually that reshaping and reforming and going, okay, now I know what I'm looking at.
Yep.
I can actually work with this.
Yeah.
Yes. And also, it's not all of you. It might be a piece, a big piece perhaps, but an important piece to fit into the puzzle of who, you are or evolving into.
Yeah, absolutely. Burkie, can you pass me the pen on the oh no, now I'm asking a lot of you. So this is my little example.
Introduced to this today. It's incredible.
This is the Kaiko weighted spinner pen. Now,
Hashtag not sponsored.
hashtag not sponsored, but this works for me. Often in the adult space, we talk about, tools to support us and to support our movement input needs or our sensory seeking needs, but that actually are low key or minimally distracting for other people, I think. And that's the tricky thing. But I'll use this pen as a little example. I have a friend of mine that walked into a board meeting around a board table, formal. These are suit-wearing individuals. So we're talking about very, very formal work setting.
Sure.
Pacing around, doing the leg kick, needing to do some burpees halfway through a meeting, probably not going to fly very well in this context. But movement input, tactile input still needed. So this individual walked into his meeting with this pen. His boss looked at him and went, "Have you stolen my pen?" And this guy was like, "I thought I was the only person that knew about this pen," which, of course, it is not a hidden secret. But the boss then stormed off and thought, "Yeah, I know," straight to the top. So the boss ran back to his desk because he was like,
"You've stolen my
pen.
pen.
Oh, dear me, my employee has stolen my pen." Came back with his pen and was like, "What are the chances?" And the boss had been gifted one of these pens. My friend had this pen because he'd seen I had it and was like, must have. And both of them are sitting in their meeting, regulating as needed, getting their movement input as needed, still engaged in the discussions around the round table in their formal suits that might be uncomfortable, but they've got an outlet that allows them to engage in their formal work environment in a way that's inclusive and not overly in your face. And distracting for others in the room.
Yes.
So it's about finding the right fit about what tools work for you. Sometimes that might mean finding a brand of clothing where the fabric is softer, that yes, you might need to wear XYZ to work because that's part of your work uniform or expectation, but there are different varieties of things that still can achieve the same outcome, but it's in a way that meets your needs in a different way.
Absolutely. And something, that's been sort of newer in my practice that I, with that sort of integrative approach I'm passionate about is go see an OT, get a sensory profile, understand what you seek, understand what you're aversive to, understand what you need from that sort of interoceptive body perspective. It's so important.
And I think
we're with ourselves all day, every day.
Oh,
physically.
absolutely. And I think you'll agree with me from the clinical perspective, and Burkie also from the lived experience perspective, that who we are and what we prefer at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning is markedly different to Wednesday and markedly different again to Saturday morning or Friday nights.
Yes.
So, you know, our sensory preferences are constantly changing and adapting. While the base rate may be quite similar across a week or across, you know, a time span, it can vary depending on if we're sick or hormonally what's going on within our bodies, or if we are going through a stressful experience. The way that we engage with sensory input does actually change. And knowing how to meet those needs is really, really important, because if you know how to help yourself, obviously when you're cold, you know, go grab yourself a jumper, turn the heater on, whatever that is. If you're thirsty, very similar, easy fix, get yourself a drink, and you know what drinks you like and don't like, so you order the thing that works for you.
Yes.
Very similarly with all the other sensory aspects, and we're not just talking about movement. We're not just talking about touch or hearing or sight or sound. Like sound is the same thing, taste. We're also talking about those internal cues of discomfort, of those emotional, how emotions play out within our body. And when you notice that lava starting to bubble or your blood starting to boil, okay, this topic is irritating for me. I need to start to segue that quickly.
Yes.
And I think, are you getting misty-eyed?
No.
Oh,
I was covering a yawn, sorry.
Which is not I'm boring and
No,
Ariana's boring.
Because I
It
didn't
is
sleep well last
we
night. I'm
need
sorry.
more oxygen in our brains. Our brains are clever. They're
They are.
actually really good at intuitively doing what we need.
Yes. And it's a regulatory function.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us actually don't realize how much movement input we need. I have a lot of adults that say, oh, fidgets are just so distracting. They're annoying. I'm not a fidgeter, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you do realize you've been opening and closing the clip of your lunch container for the last 20 minutes while we've been talking.
Chewing
And they're
on the
like,
lid of your
oh,
pen,
I'm not.
you know.
And then they're like, oh, no, I don't need that. But I'm like, yeah, you've ripped all your lip skin off your lip with your front teeth.
How many times do you need to reorder those papers in that folder?
Yes.
Correct.
And we are all natural movement input seekers to a degree. And I think actually understanding that the human body physiologically and biomechanically is not created to sit still
That's
is
another
lesson
thing.
number one. Mind blowing, people of the air and people of the sound waves, because we were not designed to sit still.
It's one of my probably only hates around my job is I'm too sedentary to the point where I've considered like eco walk therapy or something
I'm
like
going
that.
to challenge you.
move.
Why, Ariana? Like, why isn't movement incorporated into your practice? Like, why not?
I'm going to think more about that. I don't know. There are some sessions where there's sort of somatic based work, so some movement can be involved, but you know, it's perhaps more I need to do in terms of breaking the mold of what connection looks like in sort of the style of work that I do. And maybe, it could work with one client, but the back-to-backness of it kills me.
Oh.
So
that's
therefore I'm doing, mini yoga things in between and long walks on my lunch break.
That's it. It's going to depend on each person and what each
Yeah.
session needs, kind of thing. But with my first counsellor that I saw towards the end, and admittedly I was a bit of a guinea pig for him because he's now doing a whole bunch of forest therapy stuff.
Okay.
But
Okay.
we did sessions and we met at his rooms and then we just went for a walk.
There you
And we just talked as we walked rather than just sitting in the room. Because we're just like, actually sitting here is not necessarily helpful. And especially if you bring up stuff that was perhaps a little bit painful or difficult to deal with, not just sitting there and feeling the entire weight of it, but at least having that movement, having the sensory input of being outside or in nature and things like that.
Absolutely. And the parallel quality to it too. People will describe, it's that car ride with my partner when we had the deep moments and the chats and all that.
Yep.
And I
The
think
walk.
that's often been it's very evidence-based, particularly within the space of working. Guys work shoulder to shoulder. So, gender assigned at birth, male assigned at birth, working shoulder to shoulder, talking shoulder to shoulder, turning meat over on a barbecue or, polishing a car or furniture or, moving furniture together.
Right.
That's where those deeper conversations are able to happen
More better
because
placed,
you're more regulated and that whole eyeballing. We've spoken about eye contact, how that can be incredibly intrusive and feel quite threatening. If you're eyeballing someone you don't feel very, very comfortable with.
Well, not to get woo-woo, but You're staring into someone's soul, like,
It
intently.
is. It's like they're looking into my soul, and I'm like, ugh, can we stop now?
Didn't you and I and our partners have like a 20-minute conversation about which eye you look into during eye contact when we're having dinner?
I know, and we still haven't worked
What
it out.
have you, if you stare, the research shows if you stare more at the right eye of someone, it sort of re-stimulates that regulatory function we were
Oh.
meant to experience as children, and it can be really regulating for our nervous system.
Wow.
So right eye is
As in they're right or you
They're
look into your
right.
right? Okay, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And also, isn't it if you look left, you're lying because you're being creative with your response?
So
Now I'm
I'm
thinking
some
about
research
eye
Creatively
tracking.
regulating by
Yes.
looking at your right eye. Yes.
Well, yes, there's some research
Yeah.
to suggest that, which way you look says about whether someone's being creative versus whether they're accessing a stored memory.
Yes.
So it's interesting.
So, but I think that in itself is another sort of avenue of like unpacking, and this is something we spoke about before, Ariana, before we hit record, is that moving in your practice towards a holistic approach and understanding the body systems as a whole as part of psychology treatment and intervention, it being
Yes.
actually a more inclusive way to understand and unpack and rebuild when you're working with someone.
Big time. And my whole thing with that too is, I've had people kind of be okay for a period of time and perhaps come back and go, the wheels fell off again, or the results weren't sustainable. And we look a little bit deeper and it might be like, well, I think we've kind of maxed out what we can with my skill set and our container of what we've got in here, but you might need to go off and do some gut work, or you're actually super low on magnesium, or when was the last time you ran your bloods? What about that sensory profile? When you're sort of thinking about yourself systemically like that, ideally the other challenge of that then is to integrate that into your everyday life, because you're building that sort of literacy to think about yourself as a system in your life. In terms of how you eat, sleep, function, relate to people. Like we're a system of systems, and that's what I've found to be the key to get those more sustainable results, especially if you're going after, integrating a big aspect about yourself, like, oh, hey, I have a divergence in my processing type and might need to do something with this.
So if you think about the analogy of a car, if you're forever working on the engine,
Correct.
which is doing that whole cognitive therapy, working around understanding your brain and your emotional processing, etc., that's excellent because you've got a very excellent, shiny, clean engine, but then your wheels are falling off or their brakes are worn out or you need to give it a new paint job because it's looking very sad and tired on the outside.
I call it the insight without application.
Ooh,
not enough.
Unpack that for us. That's cool.
Well, it's kind of like, you can sit there and know all of these things about yourself and, talk it through and have all of the insights, James.
Here's me and my psych again.
Yes. But like, what are you doing about it? And that's where, again, I find that real change and sustainable change comes through. And the hard part about that is it's not actually what happens in the therapy room, which is my sort of big ethos too. It's the in-between. And that's that integration space of like, you have to go back out there into your
Go
life
do the hard work.
and do the work and not just know the work, but embody it.
And that became a bit of a mantra for my wife and I, do the work.
Yeah.
And it's just like, we know, and that's it, we're in some ways privileged to have such fairly high levels of mental health awareness and understanding and knowledge
of course.
and things like that. And both are quite self-aware people.
Yes.
But there was then a different thing to go, okay, well, yeah, but now for the next, 13 days until I go see my psych again, I actually have to do the work now.
Yes.
It's not just about, I'll go to my next session and that'll help.
Correct. Yeah. It's a big part of it. And it's hard, that's the reality too. But again, being supported and having the sort of right supports around you to do that work effectively and go on that journey, because it's a journey, and it's a bit of back and forth, but I kind of think about it as like a spiral upwards. Sometimes you're revisiting the same thing, but maybe from a sort of higher place than you were before.
That's a nice way of thinking of it, because often that 3 steps forward, 2 steps back makes you feel like you're revisiting old territory. But
we're very linear with how we view progress, and I kind of like to sort of have this sort of spiral approach where sometimes someone's like, I'm still doing the thing. However, there is points of difference, and I also see it what I'm doing. So it's like, well, it can't be the same thing. You are moving, but you're revisiting.
Yeah, I like it. I think that's going to stick for me. That's going to be my takeaway from today for sure. So pedaling through to the how do we prevent getting to that point? Burkie and I have both been to the point of burnout. Yep. It's yucky. Sometimes we revisit burnout at different points because we haven't perfected the avoiding burnout situation. Obviously, knowing ourselves is part of avoiding burnout.
Sure.
But then there's the secondary component of putting it into action, putting that knowledge into action. Can you give us some hot little tips for us little ADHDers that keep making and revisiting our same mistakes, but also are trying to traverse the upward spiral?
And don't tell me what my psych told me, which was, don't
Go
be
ahead.
silly. You can't cure your burnout in 4 weeks.
What? Can I disclaimer that in there? You know what? I think there's something to that in let's normalize it a little bit. Like I think, but rather than, it's a reframe on it too, rather than sort of burnout, like, do you understand the language of rest and recovery? Because that's often what is sort of really symptomatic of burnout. And if we're kind of coming back to that sort of initial conversation around the hyperfunctionality, that often is problematic because there isn't that deep integration of rest and recovery. One, we live in a world that values productivity. So
Oh my gosh. That is what we're grinding against, I think, a lot of the
Yeah.
time. You need to be outputting. You need to be outputting product, betterness, whatever it is.
Well, yeah, corporate culture, it's a lot of take and not a lot of give back. And so we're not very well versed in sort of having deep episodes of rest. And I'm not talking take the night off. If we look at sort of our sick leave and what we're entitled to in terms of annual leave, it's really under the par in terms of what we actually need to be well. And that's maybe speaking to the mental health stats out there. So my kind of overall umbrella tip would be the rest and recovery piece. But of course, for each individual person, you could break that down into what is your language of that.
Yeah. And actually knowing what that is. So you can fill your cup when you've got those opportunities.
Yes.
And actually use that time productively instead
Yes.
of not necessarily doing things that feed your soul, but drain it more.
Well, like you were saying too, Teresa, it's different for everybody. But for example, yours would, a big piece of that would be like how much creativity have you got peppered into your day and your week, because that's probably fueling a number of areas of how you operate, from your brain to your body to, just deeper stuff that you value.
Absolutely. So I think for myself, I've done a lot of learning in that space of, okay, if my day is a lot of forward facing to other individuals that require a lot of my mental focus, etc., to support, help, do my job, etc., then what that might look like on my off time when I'm not at work is actually a little bit more insular or a little bit more creativity building or things that give me dopamine, like eating yummy food and cooking yummy food or spending time with people that just make me laugh and it's very easy and relaxed. But if I know that I'm actually going to have a weekend where there is functions that I'm going to have to be switched on for, potentially family gatherings or things like that, where, you might need to be reining in a lot of your self-control to fit the mold, or, business meetings.
But somebody's
or whatever.
rest language might be giving themselves permission to leave when it gets too much.
I love that.
And
I think now I'm in my 40s, I'm at the point where I'm like, I'm okay to actually say I've fed into this circle of whatever it is for whatever timing I'm able to, but actually
I'm
tapping out.
Yep.
And
And for some people, it's you matter to me. Let's catch up next week, but I can't be here today.
Yeah.
You know.
Or even just that whole, hey, I love the idea of us catching up, but that a big group context is not for me this weekend. Can we do one-on-one? And having that ability to have that negotiation in life is really powerful, I think, and can actually be very soul-feeding as opposed to depleting of our energy and our capacity.
I think just going back to that whole kind of work hustle culture kind of thing, one of the things we've lost or significantly diminished the ability to do is just play and be. Doing something without it. And this is something my psych was encouraging me, as I'm looking, I'm still redundant, still in my redundancy era.
Let's reframe that to your transition.
My transition, well, that's it. It went from being a redundancy, I've got a ticking clock on which I need to go and find a job, to actually my psych slapped me over the head, not literally, figuratively, and said, you're not going to cure your burnout in 4 weeks. Like, there is the provision of the redundancy package. You take the time that gives you.
As a culture, we don't transition well. It's
Exactly.
from one thing to the next. And those liminal spaces in our lives are super, super key for us to develop a coherent self.
And so she's like, so, what are you doing? This is part of when she graduated me. I was talking about, well, I went and did this on Tuesday, and I've been doing this. And she's like, great, because none of those things for an expected output or
Play.
for a dollar amount or
Yeah.
for this or that. It's because you've wanted to do it. It's not because it's created something that is going to be an output that is, financially viable, but it's
Yes.
because you wanted to do it. And look how much better you are as a result of that.
Yes.
And it's finding those abilities or those spaces to be able to just go, I'm just going to do this now because I want to.
Totally. And under that banner of rest and recovery, maybe we kind of call that one of the buckets that sort of picks up like play, like just being able to play. And like you're saying, that would be doing something without an outcome attached to it. How incredible is that?
Yeah.
And crazy that is something that is so foreign to a lot of us.
Yeah.
Our kids are fabulous at it. And then somewhere along the way, we just
But
get
we
nicely
got to this point of
conditioned
going,
out of that.
this is something I like doing. How do I monetize it and turn it into a side hustle
Oh
so
my
it brings in
gosh.
some extra income?
Right.
That's the productivity talking,
Exactly,
isn't it?
yeah.
But how interesting, something that's really prevalent in Dutch culture, and I'm half Dutch, is that they're very good at safeguarding time on their schedules. So they actually, as a culture, safeguard the time that they clean the house on their weekly schedule. So if someone says, hey, can we meet for coffee at 10 a.m. on Friday? And you're checking in with a friend about that, they'll say, actually, sorry, that's my clean the house time. Let me see if I can move that to another pocket.
Oh, wow.
Or, sorry, that's my clean the house time. And it's a non-negotiable. I'm not saying necessarily we need to be super rigid with our schedules, but actually blocking out and safeguarding time to rest and replenish and restore ourselves is actually something that is highly important in a very product-driven society.
Totally. And for the ADHD is listening out there, not to derail that, but if you're struggling with time blindness, you can work through that part because time blocking can be really hard for some.
I'm really trying to time block, and I've tried the Motion app and I've tried a myriad of other apps.
Yes.
And I might be onto my 4th or 5th millionth system. I'll let you know when I arrive at the thing that works for me, but I'm finding that if I have blocks of time at least chunked into my diary, at least it prompts me to remember that's important.
Yeah.
And I need to find another spot for it if I want to go over the top of that spot.
Totally.
And I think being respectful of ourselves is actually what's going to help us in the long run. Because if you're constantly meeting everyone else's needs over your own, that's where burnout occurs, right?
Yeah.
And that's where feeling very lackluster about life and disengaged can often start to creep in slowly, but the long-term effects of 16 years doing it, 20 years doing it, however long doing it, is the burnout, is the crash and burn, and is the why do I even need to be here questions that sometimes happen in the dark places.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So, very interesting topic to traverse today, because high functioning doesn't necessarily mean all is good in the world.
No.
And I think if you are questioning whether you've got some very inconsistent potentially areas in your life or in your tiny human's life, if you're a parent, or if you're a teacher and you're hearing a different story that's happening at home versus what you're seeing in the classroom.
Or if you're needing to do more and more and more to maintain that functionality, look at that.
Look at that, absolutely. And not just look at it as us ADHDers will often look at it. And then the squirrel thought will occur maybe another 10 years later when the wheels have actually fallen off, but actually then either share it with someone for some accountability, and it could be someone professionally or even just a loved one. That's a really good space, a good place to start, and then progress to what can I actually do to help myself in this space?
Yeah.
Because a better you is a better you, not just for yourself,
Yep.
for longevity, but also for those around you as well, because your beautiful brain enables you to do all of these wonderful things.
Yeah.
But if your beautiful brain is burnt out, no one gets to benefit from that, and you
Least of all you.
are sorely missed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are many different ways to support yourself if you are a high-functioning ADHDer. And I reckon it's super duper important to find those touch points of people professionally, friendship-wise, to make sure that you're fully supported.
And even if it's just listening to a podcast, it's starting these conversations. It's, bumping into it and going, That left me wondering.
And because there's no prescribed one method for
No.
one. It's going to be different for everyone.
No.
You're going to find different things work for you, different things will resonate with you, and begin to do that restorative work. So just have to
Love
start
that restorative work. Yes. This is
And you don't need a
essentially
shiny piece of paper with a diagnosis on it to
Not at all.
start that process. And
Not
I
at
think
all.
often we go, hey, I resonate with that reel about that potential neurodivergent brain or this way of living. Even resonance is enough for us to go, hey, how can that work for me or apply for me, and dig a
Yes.
bit deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Ariana, thank you for sharing your beautiful
Thank
wisdom
you
with
for
us
being here.
yet again.
Thank you for having me, guys.
It has been an honor and a privilege. If this has triggered something for you, please, you've done the first step by listening to this podcast. Do the next one. Talk to someone about it. We encourage you to do that.
It's
I'm
hard,
Trish.
we know, but you need to do it.
You absolutely do. Thank you so much for listening, friends. I'm Trish.
I'm Burkie.
We think you should get yourself some real
real
zeal.
zeal.
Bye. I honestly thought you were about to cry. There was a post-yawn misty-eyed and I was like,
And then I looked at him and I got the contagion. I was like, ooh.
yeah, and then I was like, you said the word yawn and I was like, oh no, I feel it rising.
Yeah.
They're excellent. They really should listen to the first one
That's it.
and the last one and the one after.
And all of them.
All of them. This will
yes,
be
I get what you
included
mean.
in
Yeah.
the outtakes.
This
For
is
sure,
part
though.
of the outtakes. That's why we're doing it.
We don't have problems. We say patting our fur baby animals that aren't real. Okay. Oh, you were going to start.
Yeah, is that all right? Permission to start the episode?
I'm ready.
Okay, cool. Welcome to Real Zeal, a podcast of... I don't know what I'm saying. I'm going to do that again. This is why I don't do the intro.